Buongiorno, care audioascoltatrici e audioascoltatori, e benvenuti a questo nuovo appuntamento di Gianlive, la vostra rassegna stampa con la lettura delle prime pagine dei maggiori quotidiani nazionali e quest'oggi, essendo nel weekend, anche internazionali. Sabato 26 febbraio 2022 e purtroppo tuttora in corso la guerra sul suolo ucraino. Partiamo quindi con la prima pagina del quotidiano italiano Corriere della Sera. In alto, moriva 10 anni fa. Il ricordo, Lucio Dalla, il sosia e la confessione mai fatta. Di Aldo Cazzullo, a pagina 35. Domani in edicola Pasolini 100, il secolo lungo, nel supplemento culturale e già oggi nell'app. La guerra in Europa. I carri armati russi a Kiev. Titolo in grassetto. Putin, ucraini, cacciate Zelensky e lui attaccheranno. Poi voci di una trattativa per la tregua. UE divisa sulle sanzioni. Campeggia a centropagina una foto di 2 militari in tuta mimetica ed equipaggiamento, di Francesco Battistini e Andrea Nicastro. Reportage, interviste e approfondimenti da pagina 2 a pagina 23. Sulla sinistra La libertà fa paura di Ernesto Galli della Loggia. Come mai l'effettiva e ormai antica partecipazione alla NATO dei paesi baltici, dell'Estonia, della Lituania e della Lettonia, tutti i paesi confinanti con la Russia e con contingenti di truppe NATO presenti da tempo nel loro territorio, non ha mai suscitato l'ira funesta dell'imperatore del Nord e la sua minaccia alla loro indipendenza? Continua a pagina 42. La profezia di Nixon di Beppe Severnini. Ci avete pensato? Se in Russia ci fosse la democrazia, tutto questo non sarebbe accaduto. La guerra folle cui stiamo assistendo, la colata di prepotenza e nostalgie imperiali, sarebbe impensabile. Ma la democrazia in Russia non c'è un uomo al comando da 22 anni, sempre più solo, ossessionato, imperscrutabile. Noi europei l'abbiamo accettato con molta rassegnazione e un po' di cinismo. Continua a pagina 42. Incertezze a ovest di Giuseppe Sarcina. Probabilmente in molti stanno sperimentando in queste ore una specie di cortocircuito psicologico. Le immagini e le notizie che arrivano dall'Ucraina, le distruzioni dei bombardamenti, la gente stipata nei sotterranei della metro, i profughi alle frontiere suscitano emozione, forse anche rabbia, sicuramente frustrazione. Continua a pagina 20. A fianco ad una vignetta di Giannelli, in primo piano, il leader nel mirino di Mosca. Forse l'ultima volta che mi vedrete vivo. Scende nel bunker e risale in strada. Si inabissa di giorno e riemerge la notte. La resistenza di Volodymyr Zelensky non è la tragedia di un uomo ridicolo, come un po' tutti lo consideravano. Il presidente ucraino in queste ore di dramma si affida al video. Gli americani l'avevano già messo su un elicottero, ma niente da fare, non è scappato Zelensky. A pagina 9. L'intervista 1. Garry Kasparov. Così lo zar rischia la fine, di Federico Fubini, a pagina 22. L'intervista 2, Javier Cercas, vuole solo distruggerci, di Paolo Lepri, a pagina 23. Il capo dei 5 Stelle, Conte, condanniamo senza se e senza ma, di Monica Guerzoni. Un'aggressione gravissima che condanno senza se e senza ma, e tutta l'Italia è unita in questo sentimento, dice al Corriere il leader del Movimento 5 Stelle, Giuseppe Conte. In questo momento c'è bisogno di una risposta forte, ma occorre unità. A pagina 17. Sotto, il governo. Questi sono i giorni più bui. Soldati e crisi energetica. Draghi pronto al piano. Di Marco Galluzzo. Un'invasione che ci riporta ai giorni più bui della storia europea. Si commuove Draghi mentre riferisce al Parlamento della tragica situazione in Ucraina. L'analisi dell'emergenza e il piano per fronteggiarla, con altri soldati per il sistema difensivo NATO e il pacchetto per contrastare la crisi energetica, a pagina 16. La rubrica 7 giorni di Francesco Verderani. Quel caso Italia, il titolo. Non c'è da avere dubbi sulla postura di Mario Draghi e del suo governo nei confronti del bugiardo. Continua a pagina 16. A fondo pagina, infine, la rubrica al caffè di Massimo Gramellini, dal titolo Quest'oggi, un eroe del nostro tempo. E proseguiamo quindi con la lettura della prima pagina del quotidiano statunitense The Wall Street Journal Weekend. Smoke and flames rise during shelling near Kiev early Saturday morning as the Ukrainian capital girded to defend itself against the Russian ground assault. The title, in bold character, Ukrainian troops battle to save Kiev. Prospect of urban combat appears likely after a brief opening for talks failed. Russian forces closed in on Kiev, attacking by land and air on Friday, while Ukrainian soldiers and civilians dug in to defend the capital. Ukraine's president vowed not to surrender. Moscow signaled an openness to talks with Kiev, but shortly after, President Vladimir Putin of Russia excoriated Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky, calling him a terrorist and urging Ukraine's military to host him, dimming prospects for diplomacy. Firefights erupted in several areas of Kiev, including the center, throughout the night into Saturday morning local time as Russian airstrikes continued. Ukrainian officials said Russian saboteur groups were trying to operate in the Ukrainian capital. By Yaroslav Trofimov in Ostomel, Ukraine, and Brett Forrest in Kiev, Ukraine. This night, they will begin to storm, Mr. Zelensky said late Friday night. We all have to know what awaits us, and we have to withstand. The fate of Ukraine is being decided right now. In the town of Vasilkiv, south of Kiev, which hosts a major Ukrainian air base, local authorities reported a large Russian airborne landing attempt. Intense fighting was going on in Vasilkiv in early Saturday morning, and Ukraine's military reported downing a Russian troop transporter plane. There was no immediate confirmation of that claim. If Russia succeeds in controlling Vasilkiv, it would effectively surround Kiev, cutting off the flow of reinforcements and supplies from the south. Ukrainian troops blew up several bridges leading into Kiev from the northwest to slow the progress of Russian armored columns that had. Please turn to page 88 to continue. Zelensky, comic to target number 1. And in a little picture we have President Volodymyr Zelensky's and 2 members of his government. By James Merson. As Russian troops closed in on Kiev on Friday, President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine posted a video of himself in the heart of the capital city, dressed in fatigues. The president is here. We are all here. Our troops are here, he said, surrounded by his top heads. We are defending our independence, our state, and that will continue. The Ukrainian leader said that Russian forces pushing toward Kiev have placed a target on his back. Russia has made clear that the aim of its attack, the biggest invasion of a European country in over half a century, is to remove Ukraine's government and install a leadership more friendly to Moscow. President Vladimir Putin of Russia urged the Ukrainian army Friday to overthrow its political leaders, whom he called terrorists, and cut a deal with Moscow, an unlikely scenario as even Mr. Zelensky's critics and political rivals have rallied to Ukraine's defense. Advisors to Mr. Zelensky said they are concerned Russian sabotage groups could try to infiltrate the government district in Kiev and attempt to assassinate the 44-year-old. Security forces are deployed around government buildings in full battle dress. In a video call with European Union leaders late Thursday, Mr. Zelensky drove home. Please turn to page 12 to continue. Stocks stage big rally to finish wild week. So there is an image of the index performance Friday on the left by Michael Wurstthorn and Joe Wallace. The stock market capped a turbulent week by rallying Friday as investors furiously shifted bets on how the Federal Reserve will proceed with interest rate increases in the wake of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. Investors bought the dip across markets over the last 2 days, wading back into. Please turn to page 810 to continue. How Western allies misjudged Putin, by Michael Gordon in Washington, Stefan Feidler in London, and Helen Kallison in Kiev, Ukraine. Western powers and their allies have lined up to oppose Russian President Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. They cannot say he didn't warn them. 15 years ago, the former KGB officer railed against US domination of global affairs and assailed the post-Cold War security order as a threat to his country. In the years that followed, he grabbed portions of Georgia, annexed Crimea, and sent troops into Ukraine's Donbas region. Mr. Putin sent repeated signals that he intended to widen Russia's sphere of influence. Please turn to page A11 to continue. Ukrainians fleeing invasion stream into EU nations. A6. Bank sanctions aim to focus the pain. A7. Global economy suffers a fresh shock. A9. China readjusts relations with Russia. A12. James McIntosh, why stocks rebounded. B13. Exchange, car trouble, prices are soaring, vehicles are in short supply, and buyers say they have had enough. B1. Biden chooses Jackson for Supreme Court. And there is a picture at the bottom of the page of Joe Biden, Mr. President, and Jackson. Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, speaking at the White House after President Biden announced her as his Supreme Court pick. President Biden selected Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to fill a vacancy on the Supreme Court, making her the first black woman to be nominated to be a justice on the nation's highest court, by Ken Thomas, Jacob Gershman, and Jess Bravin. For too long, our government and our courts haven't looked like America, Mr. Biden said Friday at the White House, introducing the judge as a proven consensus builder and a distinguished jurist. I believe it's time that we have a court that reflects the full talents and greatness of our nation with a nominee of extraordinary qualifications, he said. Judge Jackson, 51 years old, serves on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, one of the nation's most influential courts and often a stepping stone for Supreme Court justices. She joined that court in June after 8 years as a federal trial judge in the nation's capital, where she wrote more than 550 opinions, including one from 2019, in which she ruled former White House counsel Don McGahn didn't have absolute immunity. Please turn to page A4 to continue. U.S. lays out new Russian penalties. Washington, the U.S. sanctioned President Vladimir Putin of Russia on Friday as part of a broad range of new measures that the Biden administration is preparing in hopes of inflicting financial pain on Moscow after Russia invaded Ukraine. By Vivian Salama, Andrew Ristusha, and Jan Talley. The new penalties targeted not only Mr. Putin, but members of his inner circle. The US will also impose full blocking sanctions on the state-owned Russian Direct Investment Fund, a sovereign wealth fund, according to the White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki. The administration's broader aim, should Russia continue its incursion on Ukraine, is to target all of Russia's banks on a rolling, etc. Please turn to page A7 to continue.